Hey, you there, doom scrolling on your phone. Why don't you get off Twitter for a moment, but just take a moment, take a little break, and join me on a fun little video that I'd like to call the top 5 and bottom 5 best/worst Nintendo Switch box arts. Now, why would you want to see these? Well, because box arts, they're important. They really are. They can sometimes make or break a video game purchase. No, obviously. You would never decide to purchase a video game based off the box art, unless you're uninformed, and we all know that it's not good to be uninformed. Please go vote. But when it comes to purchasing digital or physical edition, if a box art ain't good, I don't really want it sitting on my shelf just looking ugly. I mean, look at this thing. Ugh, what a disgrace. Box art's the first thing you see when you pick up that game from the game store, and they're the last thing you see after you finally beat the game and put it away. Box arts can be beautiful, but they can also be really bad. And today we're going to go over my favorite and least favorite Nintendo Switch box arts. Some ground rules for you before we get started. I wanted to focus mostly on the Nintendo published games, but we have a couple of third-party entries in the honorable mention section, just for some balance. And we have a couple of entries here that have alternative box arts, and we will be taking those into consideration. And lastly, we're going to be taking a look at the American released versions of these box arts. No European versions and no Japanese versions. Let's get started. Let's start this list off with our number 5 worst box art, and that honor goes to Fire Emblem Warriors. And while this isn't a bad box art, it's definitely one of the most uninspired box arts we have on the console. The background is literally just a foggy mist, and the foreground are the main characters that are featured in the game, specifically the 2 original characters whose names are Leanna and Rowan, and you better believe that I had to look that up before we even started. Beyond that, you have 3 characters from Fire Emblem Fates, a character from Fire Emblem Awakening, and then of course Marth in the very back. It features mostly characters from one of the weaker Fire Emblem games, and I don't know, this box art just feels generic. And when you compare that to, say, the box art for Hyrule Warriors and the upcoming Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, it just feels outclassed by those. And for our 5th best box art, we of course have to look at Super Mario Party. Holy cow, this is a fun box art. Not the most epic thing in the world, but you gotta admire all the brand new character renders that they have in this game. I mean, look at Mario's jeans, so freaking detailed. Waluigi and Daisy dancing up in the top right, got a bunch of Joy-Cons showing that, hey baby, you need to buy a couple extra if you want to play this game. And it's just fun. It's dynamic, it's wacky, it's zany, it's a good one. It's very good. For our 4th worst box art on the Nintendo Switch, it's gotta be Luigi's Mansion 3. Now again, not a bad box art, but considering how good of a game Luigi's Mansion 3 is, this one just feels so uninspired and just kind of boring. I'm not a huge fan of Luigi's face in this thing. Sure, he's supposed to be scared, but it's kind of too detailed in a way that's not creepy or fun. It's just kind of weird looking. It just doesn't look right. And then you have Gooigi up there at the top, obviously trying to show off like, hey, you got a second player in this game, you got Gooigi, but there's just nothing going on in the background. I mean, you can barely even tell that that's a mansion hall. It's a generic look at one of the areas in the game. There's no ghosts, there's no booze. It just feels weird. And when you compare that to the Luigi's Mansion 1 box art, which is very, very similar, you got all the ghosts in there, they're all wacky, they're zany. You got the mansion creeping out in the background, and you got the booze as well. And Luigi's face just looks a lot more cartoony and fun, and it gives a way better vibe than Luigi's Mansion 3 box art. For the 4th best box art on the Nintendo Switch, the honor of course goes to Octopath Traveler. This is a beautiful box art. You have all 8 of the playable characters front and center, all in unique, beautifully rendered pieces, and the world map in the background. The only reason that this one isn't higher up on this list is because this doesn't really capture the art style in Octopath Traveler. Octopath Traveler has a very unique 3D diorama-like art style that really pops and really sets itself apart from a lot of other RPGs, and this box art doesn't really capture that very well, but still, the art on this one is incredible in its own right. And this is the first game on this list to feature alternate box arts that you can download off of My Nintendo. Now for this specific game, you could get 8 unique box arts, each featuring one of the main playable characters, in brand new art renders again, which is a lot of effort and something they definitely did not have to do. And for our 3rd worst Nintendo Switch box art, we've got not a bad box art once again, but just one that just feels disappointing, and it's the Super Mario 3D All-Stars box art. Now, for something called Super Mario 3D All-Stars, where you're getting Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy, 3 of the best games of all time, and 2 of them that have never been released anywhere else besides their original platforms, on one single cartridge, all on the Nintendo Switch, I feel like they could have done something a little bit better. I mean, it just feels it almost feels incomplete, like maybe they had something else built into this. Maybe there was a fourth game in there that should have been on there that they had to take away last minute for greedy money reasons. I don't know. It just seems so weird. And this the 3 different box arts kind of squished into itself. It's a bit of a disappointment. And compare that to some of the effort they put into other collections in Nintendo's history, as well as even the original Super Mario All-Stars render. This one just leaves a lot to be desired. And for our third best box art, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3: The Black Order. Now, I wasn't a huge fan of this game, but this box art just screams epic. You've got so many different diverse Marvel heroes, all on one box art, all in original renders, all popping out of the screen like a giant comic book piece. This looks awesome. Now compare this to the previous entries in the Marvel Ultimate Alliance franchise, and you can kind of see why I made this decision. The old box art renders are just kind of weird looking. They don't really hold up nowadays. They kind of focus on this very hyper realistic art style that doesn't quite capture the looks of the characters from the movies that they were in. On Ultimate Alliance 1, you have Elektra, who was in probably one of the worst Marvel movies of all time. You got a very weird off looking Hugh Jackman Wolverine, and you've got a Skyrim Norn playing as Thor, and what looks to be Squidward, but anime Squidward from that fan SpongeBob anime that's on youtube.com. You should go look at that. That's really good. I'll put a link in the description. It's really weird. This box art just doesn't look right nowadays. Spider-Man looks fine, but every other character on this thing just doesn't look right. Even Iron Man looks oddly fat. And when looking at Ultimate Alliance 2, all the characters just look, again, angry, weird. The renders don't look quite right. And even Spider-Man looks kind of awkward. They're all just so angry. Why are you so angry? You're all teaming up. You're having a fun time. It's Ultimate Alliance. This should be happy, fun smiles, not weird, edgy, red-eyed Gambit. And again, if you go to My Nintendo, you can get an alternate box art featuring Thanos in the Black Order. Not my favorite design, but still cool to point out either way. For our number 2 worst box art, I have to admit something to you. I'm not the biggest fan of Pokemon box arts. In fact, a lot of them recently have felt pretty uninspired to me. I feel like the main legendary as the only thing featured on the box art has gotten a little old and doesn't really capture the feeling of playing Pokemon anymore, as legendaries have gotten so bloated and overused that there's just so much more to Pokemon games than the box art legendaries. And specifically with Pokemon Sword and Shield, I just feel like something else needs to be done with these. Now, these aren't the worst Pokemon box art. I think that honor goes, of course, to Pokemon Black and White, which were just literally black and white backgrounds. Compared to some of the earlier games, when you had the original Sugimori art style, these ones just pale in comparison. And they even had a lot more room to work with the Switch's larger box cases. And recently, they are releasing a brand new physical version of Pokemon Sword and Shield with the DLC bundled in. And, oh boy, if you think these ones are bad, when you get a load of this thing, They tacked on this giant text box at the bottom explaining how the DLC works, as well as the legendaries, featuring even more generic looking backgrounds behind them. None of this works, none of this looks good, it just feels awkward, and that is why this is the number 2 worst box art. For our second best box art on the Nintendo Switch, of course we have to give respect to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. One of the best things about this box art is that you have Link looking out over the Great Plateau onto the world of Hyrule around him. And this specific shot invokes the same exact feeling you get when you first come out of the cave at the start of the game, and you get to look on into the giant world that you're about to explore. It really captures the feeling of what Breath of the Wild brought to the Nintendo Switch. Now, of course, this is the American box art because I know the European one is a little bit different. I gotta say to my friends in Europe, you guys kind of got screwed. This one's definitely not as good. I don't like Link looking back at the camera. I much prefer him looking onward towards the adventure ahead. And it's just not as good. The American box art definitely is the superior one. You look at the full render here, holy cow. It is beautiful. And for a few honorable mentions, I feel like we need to give a shout out to. We have every single Nintendo Switch third-party title that featured this giant block of text at the top of the box art. Here we have Wolfenstein 2, which is a game that requires you to download a huge chunk of it in order to play it. Now, Wolfenstein 2, not a bad box art, not at all, really cool actually, but this giant chunk of text at the top of it really ruins the look of this one. Then of course we have the third piece of what I like to call the Ann Knuckles trifecta of bad box arts. This, along with featuring Dante from Devil May Cry, just represents some of the weirdest choices in terms of marketing for video games. New funky mode. Thank God they added that to the box art, because obviously I wouldn't have bought this game if it just featured Donkey Kong characters. It was the funky mode. That's what convinced me. And our last shout out goes to whichever mad creature made this atrocity. Seriously, Super Monkey Ball, Banana Blitz, and Sonic Forces, two of the worst Sega games that released in the last few years, combined together at last in a 2-game-in-1 pack. I read a joke on Twitter from someone way more famous than me and way more popular than me that I cannot for the life of me remember, that this is the game you give to someone you're about to break up with, and that is just sad. And for our number 1 worst box art on Nintendo Switch, of course, gotta give it to Fire Emblem Three Houses. While one of my favorite games on the Nintendo Switch, the box art does not do the game justice, and of course, you got the classic Claude upside down meme, and the renders of Byleth in the distance that this whole thing just doesn't feel like Fire Emblem. I don't know, something about this box art just doesn't work. The colors clash horrifically in this thing. I don't like the purple in the bottom. I don't like the vibrant reds, blues, and yellows on the 3 characters. It just looks weird. And to make matters worse, Nintendo once again offered alternative box arts on My Nintendo, and oh god, it just gets worse. I don't know what is with this render of Dimitri, but it just looks weird. I don't know, the stance, the face, the hair, it doesn't work. Claude and Edelgard look fine, but just the backgrounds, the poses, this just doesn't scream Fire Emblem Three Houses. And obviously these characters are a core part of the game, but I don't know, I feel like these box arts could have just been so much more, and that's why it's the worst one. And it's why that this, and along with most of these games, are games that I downloaded instead of actually bought the box arts for. For our top box art honorable mentions, we have, of course, Astral Chain, and its amazing manga-like art direction, also featuring some My Nintendo alternate pieces. Another shout out to Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE Encore, a box art that truly captures what it means to be a J-pop turn-based battle RPG. And again, My Nintendo alternate box arts. Another shout out goes to Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I mentioned this one before, but this box art is just epic and really shows off some of the dread that comes off with the story of this game. Yoshi's Crafted World certainly deserves a shout out for a box art that definitely captures the fun, creative, and crafty design of this 2D platformer. And our last shout out goes to Super Mario Odyssey. This game just barely missed out on the top 5 for me, but I gotta point out that this box art actually is something special. You got postcards from all the different worlds that you're traveling around, and Mario flying at you in front of the screen. This one truly captures what it means to go on an Odyssey. And of course, that finally leads us to number 1, the best box art on Nintendo Switch, and I think that this one stands above every single other one because it is just that good, and that is, of course, the Super Smash Ultimate box art. The theme of this game is everyone is here, and nothing screams everyone is here than a absolute metric ton of completely original character renders for the Super Smash Bros. Cast, all jumping in this crazy dynamic. The background is flashy, it's amazing, all the characters are in awesome epic poses. This is just an amazing little piece. And I think what this box art does better than any other games that we showed off here is that it just represents the game so well. Smash Bros. Is a celebration of video games, and nothing shows that off more than the front cover of the Nintendo Switch box art. So those are my top 5 favorite Nintendo Switch box arts, and my top 5 least favorite Nintendo Switch box arts. But what do you all think? Do you have any box arts that didn't make this list? Do you disagree with me on any of these things? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, Carbon Base Banner, did you have anything you wanted to add? Yeah, just a bit of advice. If a strange man in the woods offers to sell you the special edition steel bookcase for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, don't take it. This thing, it just looks terrible.